So glad to have you here today. We thank you for coming. We thank you for your interest. We thank those who have attended in the past Deaf Matters Conference. We thank you for the attendees who are new to the conference. It is our hope that you will be inspired and encouraged to learn more, gain more knowledge, and advocate for the deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind community.
This is the end of my professional experiences. Then I prayed and asked God to, instead of saying why, I asked him, what are you preparing me for? And this is what God prepared me for. With family support, people spending the night, me writing, because I couldn't hear at all. For a while I couldn't hear, so it was like my life had turned upside down. So, but family and love, and I always have to mention Mrs. Beasley. Mrs. Beasley is in the back. When I told her, well, I was introduced to her because I didn't know her. But when I explained to her that I wanted to have a conference, she said,
of course, because the future and all the funding is something called integrated health. That you just go to one place for your physical health, your mental health, and all the other services you need. Integrated health is the mantra, and it is only right. We will do better services for individuals, there will be better outcomes through an integrated system, and overall that will also save money. But the battle is, again, is it going to be the public system in Michigan that's going to be funded for this, or are contracts going to be given to the for-profit health plans out there?
I was hit with hearing aids. I did fine in school. I was mainstream, but my hearing got worse and worse. To the point where I was struggling. I had some social isolation. I was disconnecting from friends and family. Thankfully, there was an option for me, and that was to go for an implant. I will say, at 15, being able to communicate again was the biggest thing that did for me. I knew at 15 that that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, was help others who also have hearing loss, not just for sounds, but for communication.
In my journey that I'll share throughout my presentation, I came across this book, which I'm going to heavily reference. And the name of the book is For Hearing People Only. It's a book that my sign language ASL instructor introduced me to a couple years ago. And in reading it, it became more about just being able to use my fingers and facial expressions and body language in a certain way. It became about understanding the people who, in many cases, have to use the language.
Thank you so much for inviting me. You know, when Dr. Hill extended this invite for me, I was so excited, and I don't quite know whether she understands how much I appreciated this opportunity, you know, to come out and meet folks in our community. It's always great to talk about the work that we do at the Authority, but I wanted to do a little more than that in my discussion with you here this morning, because I figure this, look, you can come over at the Authority anytime. I can come over anytime and have these conversations with you. But I just thought that it would be just one of those things where I get an opportunity to just share my story with you just a bit here. So what I really wanted to talk about, though, was just my personal experiences, and these are not any lofty goals and leadership and all of that great stuff. I just want to give you a sense as to where I've been, who I am, you know, and what makes me who I am here. So I've titled my presentation Foundation. You know, look, I'm not going to kid to anyone, okay? At the center of my life is God. And if I can't talk about God in terms of the, you know, company that I'm in, then perhaps that's not the company for me to be in. I'm just going to be very, very, you know, clear on that, okay? He is the center of my life, and he is the one who I strive to get every power and clarity that I possibly can in everything that I do. I hope.
Simple problem is most folks that are blind or visually impaired do not have between $5,000 and $10,000 to buy one of those pair of glasses. Because the poverty rate and the people that live as blind generally are functioning at poverty level, or maybe about 200% of poverty level. And the other issue that was very important in the video is family support. Because of the number of areas we service, it's very noticeable to us that our clients in the city of Detroit, which we probably have about 40 to 45% of all our clients come from the city of Detroit, do not have the support that they should have, which makes it even more difficult for us, because it becomes incumbent on us to do more training to make them as independent as possible. I've noted that in the other counties, the Macombs, the Oaklands, the Livingston, Washtenaw, Monroe, St. Clair, there tends to be more family support. And that's important, because that's, to be sincerely honest, no matter how good you are at being blind folks will generally need somebody else in their lives.
I don't have any of these, just the high pitches, but if you don't know, you don't hear them, you don't miss it. I didn't really have to ask people to repeat themselves unless they were whispering to me. Didn't have problems with the telephone. I didn't have ringing in my ears, speaking loudly, problems with noise, any of that. So I didn't even know I had a hearing loss. So the audiologist told me I needed hearing aids, and they put the testers in, and then it's like a light came on. I realized I'm not hearing a lot of things. That's when you realize, that people whispering you don't hear, people behind me you don't hear, and it helps a lot. The hearing aids, I was able to get hearing aids, but I went for 5 years without knowing that I had a hearing loss, and the doctors never told me. So I went back to the ENT, and I told him, I want a copy of my file. Got a copy of my file. It's right in there that I had suffered a significant hearing loss, but they never told me.
I come to rock the boat a little bit because I'm deaf. And I grew up very different from most deaf people. When I was born, back in those times, in 48, the 50s and 60s, deaf was a taboo. To have a deaf child was out. My parents didn't even want me to focus on that. When I was born deaf, but when they took me flying to California, San Francisco, Denver, Colorado, New York, I was being examined by different doctors. And the doctors put wires through my hair, all through my head, and I had a machine. And I was about 5 or 6. I had started talking at that time. And I asked my mother, I said, Mom, am I crazy? What's wrong with me? And I said, my mother said, I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with you, because I was having temper tantrum. I was throwing things, I was frustrated, and I didn't want to eat. And my mother was trying to figure out what was wrong. But herself was hard of hearing. But she didn't think that I was not able to hear, because I was responding to her and trying to figure out what is going on here. So when I came, they put a hearing aid on me. And my mother was working with me to have a clear talk, clear. And my sisters and brothers were correcting me when I say a word wrong. So my mother would say something, and I always respond. At the age of 9, I had a hearing aid on, and I was responding. When I didn't have the hearing aid on, I was responding. So my mother said, cancer here or cancer here? Which one is it? So at 9, I didn't have any hearing, but never knew that. I never knew that. I went through a regular hearing school. If you were from Detroit, I went to McDowell Elementary for elementary school with all my brothers and sisters. So when I had to have my homework, I didn't get it myself. My brothers or sisters go to the teacher, collect my homework. I come home and they taught me. So I was prepared before I even got to the classroom. So it's right on the board, I knew what a teacher was. If the bell rang, I never knew it. But I only knew it rang because kids would start packing up.
Which is what we need to do as cosmopolitan citizens, right? We're constantly influenced by our global society, but we tend to reject that. When we talk about cultures, our cultures are changing continuously. But cultures tend to be exclusive more than inclusive, right? And people, when you have to travel, you realize that we need inclusion because you're faced with the need for the help of other people to communicate, to be cared for, to be loved, and to love. We know from resilience and empowerment research that when you do something for others, you heal as well. Yesterday we had a wonderful speaker, the prosecuting attorney, who talked about kindness. That resonated really well because it's the focus of our work. So right now, you're going to see a slide that says when we're working with communities, we use the resources at hand. We make with what's due, right? We do with what we have. And that's what we've done everywhere, and that's why we think this is so powerful with these kids. You see these beautiful kids.
To be met. And that's what we are working hard to do. And again, you ask people who are here today, we would want to reach out to you so you could help us advocate for the services, for everything, so we can be mutually included, so we can have the rights that everybody else has, that the hearing people have.